Peace Code Keepers. Time for another great episode of Dr. Kimya's class, Professor Kimya's class. So on the show today, we have the good brother, Minister Zumbi Shawala. What's good brother? How you doing?
Peace.
All right, you know, Shawala and I always chop it up. Hey man, I really appreciate in our last conversation where you talked about what is on code. What does that really mean? So we're going to have to do a show on that, man, because I think you're right. We really need to codify the code. We really need to codify the code.
And reason I said that is because, you know, with all of these documents that are coming out, the question we need to ask is, okay, so where are our documents? Where is our 100-year plan that anyone who can read a stop sign should be able to take that plan and follow through? This is the importance of think tanks and how we can begin to create policy amongst our people. And this is where codes emerge from. So I'm saying that as we evolve, our thought process must evolve, our language must evolve, and our behavior must evolve.
I say that. And to do that, man, it looks like the professor has arrived. So, hey, let's ready for the professor.
Black diamond, 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 black diamond.
Grandpa Crump. All right, fellow students, it's now time. The professor is here. Doc, what's good? Good to see you, Doc. What's happening?
Good to see you both. Thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Hopefully you have your notebooks ready. I have mine ready. I'm getting ready to take copious notes. Tonight we're going to be talking about Black schooling, Black money, and Black politics. So let's go. We're ready. We're all in our places with bright, smiley faces, and this is the way to rock the revolution. Let's go.
Okay. All right. So understand something. When we talk about revolution, those are changes, but the next stage after revolution is Black evolution. So we have to talk about what we need to get before we get to the revolution stage. So Black folks need to, and I said this last week also, Black folks need to understand what we've done for centuries. It's in many Black books. We do presentations in communities. We have centuries of writings. We have centuries of teachers who explain this. So I always tell our people, never pretend that we don't have the information presented to us. The information is out there. I had a Black man today tell me that nobody explains this to us. This is where Black people need to read more. We have entire books for centuries where our people have said, here's what we need to develop. As Harold Cruse explains, our inner world. But before Harold Cruse was born, of course, we have Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Maggie Lena Walker, W.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, Marcus Garvey, Anna Julia Cooper. We have all these trailblazers that we're only talking about Blacks in USA. And if we have more than that, we're talking about up and down the Western Hemisphere. And then we're talking about Eastern Hemisphere and our African origins. So I just want our people to never, ever claim that we've not done anything. We just have to increase, like Harold Cruse explains, increase our own concepts, our own theories, our own research, and our own actions for ourselves. Stop adding non-Black stuff and trying to force it to pertain to us. If you're going through all that, you might as well put that time and effort into increasing our own concepts, theories, research, and actions that go into our own policies and advance our people. We can add non-Black stuff to it, but that can't be pretending that's the only thing we have. So I really want our people to stop claiming that no one's ever done this before, no one's ever thought of this, no one ever told me. We have to stop waiting for people to bang on our door saying, pay attention. We literally have people doing community work out of their own pockets. I'm one of them. I provide community resource tables in different cities and different states with global collaborations. We have people doing the work. We have Black folks doing the work for Black folks, okay? So this is why I just always tell our people, never claim that no one's doing it. Never wait for schools to change. Never wait for government to change, police to change. This is the inner world where we can focus on changing others as well, but that change only increases if we have the resources that we've developed to make those resources within our group. And that's the inner world that also Harold Cruse explained.
All right. So, Doc, you just mentioned that we've been doing this for a long period of time. So when I hear our people say, we're the only group, we're the only culture that harms each other. We're the only culture that doesn't support each other. We're the only culture that doesn't look out for each other. It sounds to me like everything you're saying is totally in opposition to that type of rhetoric. What should I say to people when I hear that type of rhetoric?
It depends on if you want to waste. I recommend, in general, don't waste time trying to explain everything to everybody. There are some people who are intentional time wasters and distractors. And those people who intentionally want to waste your Black time are people who are distractions so that you take your time and energy and even your money, depending on what it is, and put it into them. So that you try to convince them with something that they're never going to be convinced. And now when it's time to do inner work for our people, you're exhausted, you don't have any more resources. So this is why I always tell Black folks, you have to self-reflect. Where am I going to put my time? Where am I going to put my effort? There's some people who want to believe certain things regardless of how much effort I put. There's some people who are going to be mad at you no matter what you say, no matter how you say it, no matter how many smiles you add to it. So you just have to also ask yourself that. People have to research. And I say research as if internet does not exist as well. Those of us who were born before the internet existed, we better know libraries are still here. And like I always say, Black folks were the first people to put books on the corner because we were not allowed in libraries and bookstores and in certain schools even. So when people say we don't have, that means they choose not to know about Frederick Douglass. They choose not to even know about what we brought to Western Hemisphere when we were forced into enslavement. We come from thousands of years of knowledge on African lands, even before they were forced into a continent, even before they were forced into nations. So we create and different knowledges on the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas, the South Americas, the North America. We create knowledge all around the world. So people who want you to convince them of that, that's really on them. And those people, if they brag about teaching that to new generations of Black folks, then that's unfortunate as well. So there's many things that people can read. There's many writings. I just always tell people, are you waiting for schools to tell you what to know? Are you waiting for, that's why I tell Black folks, this whole banned book thing, that's another attention grabber. Nobody, literally nobody tells you what books to read. Literally nobody tells you what books to purchase, what books to get from the library. Librarians will act like, oh my goodness, they made us get rid of these books. Well, where are y'all sending those books to? What, y'all burning the books? Probably not, right? So this is where I hold everyone accountable. People love to pretend they don't have decision-making power, but then they want clout, respect, and salary to brag about their decision-making power, okay? So this is just why I tell people, you have to just really self-reflect and be honest. You can't brag about your power, your decision-making capacity, your education, or anything else, but then when the decision comes up you want to claim ignorance. I always tell Black folks, we're not ignorant people. It's just a matter of challenging ourselves to recognize when we don't know, not because the information is not out there, but because we have not inconvenienced ourselves. So I'll stop there.
Oh, okay. I always like to start with having a clear definition of terms because people like to take terms and just run with them. So in dealing with tonight's topic, there's three things you had mentioned. I'm kind of rewording them. You mentioned Black politics, Black economic empowerment, and I would say Black education. So before the people start misinterpreting things, would you like to give a definition or an explanation of each so that way everybody's on the same page?
No, I actually do not like giving definitions. I actually want people to listen and take notes.
Okay. Well, the only reason I say that is as kind of a foundation, because people like to take things, run with them, misinterpret them, and then we get this whole other situation. I just want to make sure that people are on the same page, and at least it works for me. You know, I guess I can't speak for anyone else. So because we use terms so much, we don't really take the time to define them. And I think that's where we get into trouble sometimes.
Well, I define it by saying everything I say. I explain things very clearly and concisely. So this is why I just want Black folks to listen. Like, I don't use terms like imperialism, anti-fascism, and all that stuff. Instead, I actually have complete sentences. So this is why I encourage Black folks to not ask me for definitions and to actually just listen, take some notes, and then we can talk about all that.
Okay, so what would you intend for the audience to pick up tonight?
Well, so this is what my fourth presentation. So I want Black folks to pick up that you can ask questions based on your perspective on what you're doing to change education in your families, in your communities, what you're bringing into schools, what you're doing to change economic development, that is wealth building within families, wealth building within yourself, and the political part, that's something about knowledge beyond political parties. And this is all explained if people watched my Harold Cruse presentation from April as well.
All right, so you know what? Tell us a little bit about that. You know, what should we know about Harold Cruse as it relates to politics, as it relates to Black politics?
I don't know if people want me to start at Harold Cruse, though. I do. Again, I have a reading list of Harold Cruse's work, and people can email me for the reading list, including some of my writings. But Harold Cruse explained the inner world. What does it mean when we are looking at our culture, Black folks in the USA? So yes, we are African, but we have to understand what we've created on this land that became the United States of America. That's why Harold Cruse focused on Black culture in the USA. We call it, of course, Negro culture. What do we have in the United States of America? He started that when he was young. He worked for a theater in Harlem, and he was like, why are we Black folks who are doing European plays? He was like, what, are we saying that we don't have Black plays that we can do? And it was an example to him that Black folks focus a whole lot on non-Black stuff, not only European stuff, but non-Black stuff in general, without knowing what do we have? What do we have? Which is also why he focused less on a global African approach and focused more on those of us who are here as enslaved Africans over centuries. That's also why he was a former American communist. He left the Communist Party because it's not for Black folks. So instead, he viewed that he could integrate components of communism that pertain to us, but only after he initially presented some concepts, theories, and actions for our people. So that's where, if you go to the link for my presentation in April, I have the entire PowerPoint where we include the stages. And the stages are outlining what is it culturally that we have. And he explained that political leaders, Black political leaders specifically, and Black civil rights leaders, yes, they can play a role in our culture, but they cannot be the central component of our culture. Instead, that's Black artists and Black intellectuals. But Harold Cruse also held Black intellectuals accountable, and that's why he called it the crisis of the Negro intellectual, because intellectuals boast about teaching, publishing, being on campuses, and so forth. But what are you doing in communities to help our people? If you ever question why Black folks rely on religious leaders, civil rights leaders, politicians, and police, it's because the people who boast about all this education are not doing what they should do. So I'm one of the few, very few, Black academicians who actually does community work. And I always required my students to do community work. So that's why Harold Cruse said that the central focus is Black artists and Black intellectuals. And that's our culture as for change.
Intriguing. One of the things that struck me in what you just stated, Doc, was that I'm trying to make sure I place this in just the right way. You said that we waste our time. Well, you didn't put it in that words, but too far often we waste our time trying to convince people of things, and we need them to do research. Too often we come across positions that are not well researched. I keep hearing you use the term research, study. So what then is the criteria, maybe the direction that Black education should go? If we need to study more, if we need to be researched more, what is the direction of Black education? Where do we go with this?
Like I always say, you have to read. Black folks love to talk about reading when you talk about religion, but I always tell people, you have to just read in general. That has to be the focus. And if you tell me to define politics, well, politics pertains to everything, because everything is political. Changing school systems, that's political, because school accreditors are political. School teachers are political. Superintendent is political, and this includes the Black folks, okay? So this is where I just want our people to understand what it means to read, the policy implications. As I always explain, a lot of times the parents who are outraged at school decisions are not that involved in schools in the first place. So therefore, why should schools not make certain decisions that are harmful if they feel that parents oftentimes not present either way, and they assume that parents will not care, parents will not do anything to make changes? So that's also political, because again, that's decision making. So politics is beyond political parties and beyond specific politicians. It has to do with our tax-paying jobs. It has to do with everything that contributes to the government. So that's political.
Dead Prez, I'm a big fan of Dead Prez. It's bigger than hip hop, y'all. Dead Prez says that politics is the management of a limited amount of resources and opportunities. I've loved that definition of politics. I've kind of lived with it. I've actually ran for the school board in my area in 2018 with that understanding that it was a control of limited resources and opportunities. How does that play into Black politics in the way that you're teaching us?
I don't necessarily view it as limited. It depends on how people came to that conclusion. Uh, this is why I always tell Black folks, you have to specialize in doing reviews for a curriculum, which I specialize in doing. You also have to have Black folks who specialize in doing financial audits. So you can't say something's limited just because you're skeptical or you're critical. So this is where I always tell people, you can't go into it just saying it's limited. Limited for who? I mean, we're paying a lot of taxes. Non-Blacks know how to utilize what is being paid through taxes. And this includes immigrant populations, as I explained weeks ago. And this includes Black immigrant populations, right? So again, we can't always think that everything is limited, because that's a perpetual skepticism. That if you tell people that something is limited, then a lot of people will not try, because you're telling them that it's not going to work out anyway. And by the way, when a lot of people say something is limited, it's a very anti-capitalism standpoint to which they are coming from. So I want Black folks to not go into it with that perspective either. Instead, be very specific. What limits are there as far as you're concerned? Again, it can't be that books are limited unless you actually have a review of the curriculum. Do you know what books are accessible? Also, do you have books at the house? Do you have books in the apartment? Do you have books in the community resource centers? So we always have to assess, what do you mean by limitations? Not by definition, but like what really is happening.
Okay, from an economic empowerment perspective, in regards to, and I think this is one of the things that, at least for me, I always find troublesome. It's like everybody wants to talk about having community, but yet don't want to deal with economics. It's like trying to have a human body with no bloodstream. So there has to be a sense of blood flow. What should the, I shouldn't say proper, but what attitude should the people take towards economic empowerment? Not from an anti-capitalist perspective, but more of an African-centered approach to economics.
Okay, so economic development means you have to know what it means to save money. However, if you're in a family where everyone's told you have to give money to each other, including if you're on SNAP, then a lot of people have a difficult time saving money because they've been told that the money has to always go back to the family. So that's why a lot of people do not have savings accounts, because they always have to give money back. So this is where, when we do wealth building presentations, we always explain wealth is not synonymous with becoming a millionaire. It means having a savings account. It means, what does it mean to, even if you don't quite have a job that has a 401k, connecting with financial advisors who will give you some advice, sometimes for free initially, where they talk to you about giving money every few months into some kind of investment, a legitimate one. So it can't just be somebody who tells you they do investments. It has to be someone that's legally allowed to do it, and building those resources. And so this is where economic development has to be based on factual information. It cannot just be based on paranoia. And, I'm part of many organizations, and we always have to explain skepticism and paranoia is based on centuries of Black folks regarding race being told that things are going to end. This also is why you'll sometimes see groups that say, eventually it's going to be like a race war. So people will do things like pack up firearms, and they believe in not having bank accounts because eventually they have to just leave to go somewhere. And I tell people that's a scare tactic. The average Black person should not be wasting time on that, because most people will not be going anywhere outside the United States of America, nor I don't think should they. So instead, we have to talk about what does it really mean to build resources. Also, I do explain the factual meaning of capitalism. We have to explain that capitalism is not defined as exploitation of labor. That is a particular definition, particularly from Marxism. And again, as a sociologist, a criminologist, I have 20 years of teaching theories, which includes teaching Marxism and Marxian conflict theory. And so we want people to understand the initial meaning of capitalism is based on like an Adam Smith mode of production. That's the definition of capitalism also that Booker T. Washington went based on. He didn't read Adam Smith, but when you read Up from Slavery, Booker T. Washington's based on this. You have this labor, you're producing a product, and ideas you get profit from it. Now, of course, anti-capitalism notions have existed for centuries, long before Karl Marx and Frederick Engels were born. But a lot of times people talk about capitalism in the past, let's say 150 years, they talk about it in terms of exploitation of labor. So this is where I explain to Black folks, when we talk about economic development, you have to go based on the updated version of capitalism. You have to understand that capitalism has been integrated with European form of socialism for more than a century in the United States of America, parts of Europe, Canada, and parts of the world as well, which is how you're able to have SNAP, which is how you're able to have veterans benefits, which is how you're able to have disability, SSI, and other resources. You would not be able to have that, which is paid through our taxes, if we did not have socialism integrated with capitalism. And every socialist, communalist nation, and even China, which had their form of communism, they all integrate components of capitalism the moment they say they want to compete in a market to build entrepreneurship, to build profit, to build trade. Because again, socialism means that your profit mostly goes back into the government, because it says for the people, by the people kind of format. And communism is even more than that. So this is where we have to explain to Black folks, economic development, you have to have factual information about what economy means, understand why nearly every nation that starts off, like when I send Black folks information about Black women's economic development, we use examples from Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Kenya. This is why you learn about Julius Nyerere when he did his communalism format, why it failed, because he learned that you want to integrate eventually something, because or else it's controlling people's profit too much. So this is where we have to explain that. I also explain to Black folks, if you are opposed to sales taxes, if you're opposed to income taxes, if you're opposed to federal taxes, then guess what? You will not really like being socialist 100%, because socialism, 100% socialism, would require more taxes. Socialism is not based on donations. It's based on the government pulling from your income. Socialism is not based on you donating money back. It's based on an actual format that's official, just like communalism is based on an official format. So I always explain these economic formats to people from a political science standpoint, because that's also my background, and from a sociological standpoint, because people have to understand that if you're opposed to taxes, if you think that Black folks should not pay taxes, you got to know that reparations also come from taxes. And you can't say that you want a socialist government 100% if you would be opposed to paying taxes. Another response that a lot of Black folks give to me is they say, well, if I want socialism, that doesn't mean I want a government. And I always tell people, everything that humans create becomes an economic system and a government. There's no such thing as humans creating something and they're just hanging out with each other and it doesn't become formal and official. Morality is created and laws get created. That's how we have economic system, policies, legislation, and guess what? A government, okay? So therefore, when we talk about economic development as a people, We have to talk about it in a factual way. We can't go by scare tactics. We can't go based on something that seems very cool to say. Black folks have to learn facts. We have writings. We actually have centuries of Black capitalism writings. We have a lot of work. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. It doesn't mean you have to be pro-capitalism. It doesn't mean you have to be anti-capitalism. But you have to be pro-facts and pro-reality and understand that we've already integrated socialism with capitalism for more than 150 years. USA is still the most capitalist nation of all the predominantly white nations around the world, but every nation, including China now, that wants to have some kind of profit that increases and more business ownership, more global trade, they all realize they can't be 100% communist. They can't be 100% socialist. They can't be 100% communalist. They all integrate components of capitalism. And these are facts beyond people's daydreaming that people keep listening to in different organizations.
Interesting. So I'm trying to synthesize all that you've shared with us, and what can I do other than read and research? Because I know that's going to be one of the starting points. What else can I do to positively impact the Black economics in my community and in my household? And you know what? Zumbi, I know, has a great chapter in his book on how we can do some of those things. So we're not going to use his solutions. Let's see if your solutions kind of line up with some of the things that Zumbi has taught us. So to positively, go ahead.
Yeah, every city and every state has at least one Black organization that's doing presentations for Black folks, virtual and in person. So you'll learn about forming an equity line of credit. You'll learn about creating a savings account. You'll have a financial advisor who will help you get some resources. I do community resource tables in different cities and different states where I pass around information, including the people who have extreme viewpoints. I tell people, a lot of people with extreme viewpoints, a lot of them have jobs where they're on 401k. And I tell them, you're on 401k, which is a form of capitalism integrated with socialism. So there are people out there doing the work. So this is why I tell Black folks, go to meetup.com, go to Eventbrite, find some events, join listservs. There's chambers of commerce. We have the Black chambers of commerce that are doing virtual work and in-person work. We have all types of different organizations. They're either called Black, or some of them are called African wealth building groups. Some of them are in cities, some of them in counties across the nation. But I encourage Black folks to read more, and reading includes reading websites, connecting with organizations, packing up information, because there are organizations out there doing this work, economic development. But again, this ties to education, because I specialize in curriculum development. So you have to also be invested in teaching our people to read more, because that is the requirement to learn more about economics. And then also connects to health, because Dr. Thomas Sowell writes about that, and he critiques the health system. We talk about affordable health care. You got to understand, affordable health care coming more and more through our taxes does not mean that affordable health care is actually good health care. So we have to demand a lot more. We have to pay a lot of attention and tell the government officials and decision makers that it's not like we want something. Well, when they call it free, first of all, it's not free because it comes from our taxes. So I do want Black folks to remember that. When they say something is free, unless those of us are paying out of pocket to do it, if it's coming from the government, it's not free. It's coming through your taxes. So always remember, when the government says you don't have to pay out of pocket, it's because it already comes through our taxes. So that's not the same thing as when Black folks pay out of our pockets to do community resource tables and presentations. Government stuff is never free, it's through our taxes. So this is where Black folks need to understand what this means, utilize the resources. Black folks have created for centuries. We've created a lot of resources. I always explain when I'm interviewed that we've created a lot of resources for our people. Unfortunately, a lot of our people have been taught that instead of using these resources and conclusions and solutions for our people, we keep being taught to take a U-turn and talk about oppression a lot. Meanwhile, non-Blacks, including immigrant populations, they are using the resources that we've created because we have a century of education resources. We've done all, I explain this when I'm always interviewed and when I teach classes. We have all these resources. I mean, you can look at even before Frederick Douglass. And we're not talking about running away from slave plantations either. I want Black folks to understand we've literally created resources. We've done demands to police departments. We've done requirements to schools. We've done way more than demand Confederate monuments removed. And I'm born and raised in Richmond, VA. I want Black folks to stop minimizing ourselves to that, okay? We have done a lot more than that. So when you know that we've created these solutions for our people, and again, we do a lot of human rights work. So we do racial justice work because we're the trailblazers of 5 centuries of racial justice work, but that's always correlated with social class justice, right? Gender justice. So we're also trailblazers in human rights work. As Africans, we're trailblazers in that as well. So we need to recognize these solutions that we've created and stop allowing non-Blacks to use these solutions that we've created. Stop letting them be on our backs using the resources we've created while we're making U-turns talking about oppression all the time. No, we already know the oppression. That's why we're focusing on solutions, right? So go to them solutions that we've created. I tell people all the time, we've created these solutions. Non-Blacks are using these solutions, paid through our taxes. They know, a lot of times they know what our people have fought for, like literally, even before the 1950s, 1960s civil rights. We've been fighting for this. Thousands of years of Africans and 5 centuries on the Western Hemisphere, we fought for this. So we should not be making U-turns to keep saying, nah, we struggling, yo. No, stop that U-turn. We already know the struggles. That's why we got to use what we've created. Because again, these are paid through our taxes as well. Use it and stop complaining about immigrant populations and everyone else utilizing all these things. If you complain about that, it's because our people are not using what we've created.
Use what we've created. Yeah, this is a great tie-in right now. Minister Zumbi had to step off the show for a moment, step off the class. He had to leave the classroom. So I wanted to bring, attention to his great book, Gospel of Afronomics Theology. So Code Keepers, if you haven't picked up your copy, pick up your copy. Find it anywhere you find our books. So it could be Amazon, could be your local melanated bookstore, could be Barnes and Noble, hey, wherever it's clever. And in addition to that, make sure that you support Doc. She has a lot of great information that's out. If you just type in Doc's name, like for instance, let's do this. This is the platform.
Nope.
This is no. Hold tight. This is the Get On Code platform, and so if you go through our platform, you're going to find a lot of resources. You'll find the videos where Doc has talked. This is how the Irish became white. You'll also find some other great information. We got Kate Price, we got Dr. Juwanza Kinjufu, we have Dr. Ben, we have one of my favorite elders, may his name continue to be a blessing, Barashango. We have a lot of great stuff. The class that Doc taught last week. So, check that out. And then you can go to her her website as well. So, but before we move on, I got to do my commercial. So, as you know, We have the project Generational Flip, which is coming out very soon. I'm looking at an 11/17 date. It's the documentary mixtape series called Generational Flip, and you can find that at generationalflip.com. You can find that on generationalflip.com. So let's do this. Let's do this. Let's watch the trailer. And then we'll come right back with more from Doc. Here we go.
You will be wealthier.
My wife and I were flipping our first house.
When you shift the way you see things, then your life is going to shift.
Money is a tool for what you want. Money is not what you want. You don't want money.
So that goes to show that you don't have faith when you do not take your money and put it into those accounts to earn interest. When you're scared thinking that something is going to happen, God says, who are you trusting in? Because I'm the one that has created the money system.
Well, I then got offered $350 million for my company.
It says you owe about $538,000.
That the individual and the individual family unit is responsible for filling their own cups.
I went from being homeless and living on the street to owning properties in Baltimore.
And that's why I decided to start a bank.
This is something that Martin Luther King spoke about.
Stupid mistakes and failures. We continue stumbling forward
because the Black community, for the most part, had to go and rent.
All right. So once again, if you go to generationalflip.com, that's generationalflip.com. And as I was saying earlier, if you type in Doc's name, all right, you're going to find a plethora of videos where she speaks and gives a lot of great information. So
yeah, I actually just want people to go to my link tree.
Go ahead, Doc.
I want people to just go to my link tree to find some readings. I don't want people looking at a bunch of videos. As Black folks, we need to read more. That's what I want to focus on. Is I have readings on my link tree. You can email me and I'll send you PDF of entire books and articles. I actually want us to read more and not search for videos a whole lot. Actually read more is my focus as an educator.
All right, cool beans. So last words, Doc. Any last words on Black schooling, Black money, Black politics as it relates to the presenters and the thought leaders that preceded us?
Yeah, so just understand that we have to focus on developing our inner world as a people. We cannot rely and wait for governments to change, including Black folks who work for governments. We have to see what we're changing for ourselves and each other, because that's the only way to do that. But I also wanted to see if anyone who's listening has questions. Is there anyone who's listening who has any questions? As a professor, I don't like to just talk, but actually like questions and stuff.
Cool beans. Well, Code Keepers, if you have any questions, pop them in the next few seconds, and we'll love to address those questions. Now, next week, Doc is really going to go deep into these same kind of issues. And that's really going to be a full class where we expect the Code Keepers to come with a lot of great questions, because the information that's being shared is information that will definitely help us to address some of the challenges that our people are facing now. So we'll see you next week with some great questions. Doc, you did it again. And another great class.
Well, thank you. And when I say in questions, I don't want you all to ask me to define something, okay? I actually want something more profound than asking for a definition. I really want a question about what are some actions regarding economic development? What are some actions regarding reading more in households and bringing knowledge into school systems? And what does it mean to know the difference between factual information and conspiracy theories? I want to talk about what it means to have political development, which Harold Cruse explains. the focus of Black artists and Black intellectuals. So I really want something that's meaningful and productive beyond being asked about definitions, please.
All right, Code Keepers, we'll see you next week. As you know, we love you. We want you to get on code, teach the code, become the code, exemplify the code, share the code. And our code is empowerment. And as I said earlier, Zumbi and I are working on coming up with an even stronger definition of getting on code and what the empowerment agenda is going to be. Want to say thanks to good brother Anthony Pickett, always tapping in. Love your questions and comments, and we'll see y'all next week. Be at peace.